So, I am a therapist. I work mainly with women. And more than anything else, it has made me very, very passionate about helping women with conflict skills. Because there's this whole first phase of the work where you're trying to help a woman just be more sensitive to herself. Like if she has a relationship issue with someone in her life, you're just trying to help her understand her own feeling, take seriously that this is impacting her, and help her to actually take her own side, which is very hard for most women. Well, let's say you do that and it's still cycling. The conflict is happening week after week, session after session. She's bringing in this issue. That means she's probably at an edge to do the conflict with this person. And so there's this whole next phase of work that begins. And I had this experience that's happened to me a few times, and it just happened, where when I'm talking with a woman one on one, she's incredible, right? She can take her own side, she understands the impact of what's going on, she can analyze the dynamic to the moon. But then there have been these few instances where they're like, well, let me bring in my partner or let me bring in my family member, whoever it is I'm having conflict with, so that you can help facilitate the relationship. And when that happens, the woman who I know, the woman who has been able to articulately, like hot fire, explain her side and his side and shred all of this bullshit, that woman is gone. And instead, she's replaced with this other person who can't find her words, who is saying these things that are vague, and isn't even necessarily overwhelmed by her emotions about the thing, but is overwhelmed by the intensity of what it feels like to actually be bringing it to this other person. And there's all these things that women do when they're at the edge, right? Where instead of saying like, yo, when you do this, it impacts me this way, or yo, like I need this from you, right? Something that's like interpersonal. She'll either make it all about herself, like her inner psychology, and be like, oh yeah, like, it's just like because of my family and because of my patterns. She'll even like close her eyes going deeper inside. Or she'll go into this other kind of language that's like about the we. Like, oh, we just want to have better communication. I know we want to have a really good relationship. And both of those things are like avoiding the actual direct confrontation. And there are a million reasons why you might not feel safe and comfortable to have a direct confrontation that might have to do with your material safety or security or survival. Like let's say this is like a husband that you're getting divorced from, or like a baby daddy or something. There's like a lot materially that might be stopping you from wanting to kind of escalate things and speak really directly. But I've noticed that sometimes, even if none of those material factors are at play, I think it's the intensity of wanting something from the other person. Usually, when you're having conflict with someone, it's either because you want more or less or different from them, right? You like need them to be acting in a certain way that they're not. And so you're touching this like wild edge of desire, and you're touching this chaotic universe where you don't have control over the other person. And I think our default in those moments is to go back to the version of us that we think is safe and likable, because it seems like the most accurate or effective strategy for getting this other person to give us what we want. And I know conflict can be really scary, right? A lot of us haven't seen conflict modeled very well, or have gone very well. So it's already a risk to be bringing this up at all. And I think there's like, at least in the subcultures I'm a part of, there's this vision or version of what good and healthy communication is. That's like therapy conversations. That's this like highly mentalized, highly intellectualized, highly sanitized way of being like, oh, I just wanted to check in about how you were feeling about certain things because, my attachment system, yada, 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 which is very different than being able to be direct, right? Which is like, I miss you, I want you, whatever it is, this makes me angry, I feel frustrated, we're not living up to the potential of love that I see as possible, whatever it is that you're actually feeling. But the part that I harp on is that usually you're in conflict because you want something. And the way that we know to get what we want is to express and embody the version of ourself that we think is the desirable object. And so you're trying to bring in these kind of like hot feelings and needs and wants and requests and asks, but you're trying to do so in a way that maintains your kind of like safe persona. And what's weird about it is like usually if you have enough detachment, then conflict is easy for you. I don't know if you've ever like not cared what someone thought and you needed to bring something to them. It's like butter, baby. It's like cake. Like you can find your words, you can stand for yourself, you can hold your own side. But the more that you want something from someone, the more that you're attached to the outcome, the more that you're invested, the bigger the edge to conflict is, and the more it's likely to default into these other things. That's why she can say it to me, right? That's because in individual therapy, you're specifically seeking someone out who isn't connected to anything else in your life, where you can be open and honest. Whereas when you bring in your relationship, relationships are like characterized by edge signals and by undiscussables and by this whole fantasy about what the relationship is. And usually the conflict that you're trying to bring in is something that challenges all of that. And so the fact that you can do it when you have detachment is interesting. But it's only useful if you're like, okay, then how can you actually have a level of detachment to be able to enter into conflict with someone where you're very, very attached? And I think two of the things that I think of is like there's a certain kind of like psychological self connection that you can facilitate, which is again this sort of like, okay, I know what I feel. And I have like an underlying sense of self worth and an underlying feeling that I will be okay, which is very hard to get to, long term work. But the other is also kind of like a grounding in something greater than you, which is also very long term work because it's like, how can I be okay with the chaotic universe, right? Like, how can I actually trust that what's going to happen here is what needs to be happening here? And those are kind of like inner powers that you have. But in that sense, working on your ability to have conflict becomes like working on your ability to do anything. It becomes like so many other things, like a psycho-spiritual journey to find your voice, to find your worth, to find that part of you that's in touch with what it is that you actually are wanting, and to be able to stand for that.